Shall we begin, Peter?
Well, let us pray. Rachel?
Yes.
Thank you. Friends, I was going to request that we give 2 more minutes to those that have not been able to join. I've received different messages of people who are in the middle of trying to log in. If you can kindly hold on a bit for 2 minutes. We start at 5 minutes past. That 5 minutes past, that is, that 5 minutes past. Kindly. Okay, friends, I think now we can start. And I want to say that this is a great privilege to have you all joining this webinar, a webinar that is taking place during the UN Commission on Population and Development 55th session, and being an official UNCPD, that is the United Nations Commission on Population and Development 55th session side event. This event is organized courtesy of a partnership between the Kenyan government, which is hosting and the main organizer, UNFPA, that is the United Nations Population Foundation, Faith to Action Network, the African Women's Development and Communication Network, Femnet, Act Alliance, Feminista, and the Act Church of Sweden, together with the in partnership development PPD. And we are really very, very grateful to you all for showing commitment and agreeing to be part of this particular webinar. Now, this side event, as I said, co-sponsored by the government of Kenya, UNFPA, Faith to Action Network, Act Alliance, Feminista, and Act Church of Sweden, is looking at a very interesting process. It's looking at the ICPD commitments and looking on how to accelerate the promise, reimagining partnerships, power and prophetic voices for sexual reproductive health and economic justice. And it comes in at a time when we witness increasing challenges and changing global, regional, and national environments, where human rights are threatened by the rise of fundamentalisms, economic, political, and religious fundamentalism, and the shrinking space for civil society in many places. And the Commission for Population and Development has remained one space where different stakeholders, the civil society, governments, and other stakeholders can be able to interact, discuss, and finally be able to make progress without being challenged. And the rights that are found in the program of action of the International Conference on Population and Development are often contested and often denied. And from a global to local perspective, one of the reasons that they remain contested, those rights, is the implementation back that is lacking, and which is often crowded on different factors, whether some of those factors are culture, whether others are religion, whether others are policy, but they remain crowded, and therefore the implementation has been lacking. Religious actors in their diversity, from formal leadership to education and health systems, continue to hold power and presence. They are able to influence and to sway public opinion and also public action. And this is even as they offer health services and other services, including in education. And therefore, we find that the faith community is centrally placed and very well placed to the whole of the ICPD program of action, which requires a more nuanced understanding of both religion in relation to sustainable development, including sexual reproductive health and economic justice. In this side event, we'll explore the potentials as well as the pitfalls or the challenges, but mostly how to work with potential and the power and the leverage that we can get from the faith community, and in partnership with the other civil society organizations and other partners like governments. And this is what this particular side event will be exploring as we listen to the different speakers. The speakers will therefore be sharing about innovative partnerships, including between those that are faith neutral and those that are faith-based, and how the challenging current economic power and the structures and norms play out when we are looking at issues to do with the sexual reproductive health, both from a macro to community level, and this dynamic event, how those implies on those that are trying to bring change and who are defending the human rights and advocating for gender transformative action. So we have 3 objectives for this particular side event. One will be to share opportunities, challenges, and good practices in innovative partnerships between civil society, including faith actors and governments, as well as sharing learnings from gender advocates, and of course, looking at defending the promises of ICPD program of action, including sexual reproductive health and economic justice. The other objective is to identify strategic areas of collaboration in the context of the UN Commission and in communities to ensure there is not a rollback of the promises that were made at the ICPD plan of action. And we'll also be trying to look at the different interventions that have been done in different places. That is part of the sharing of the experiences. With that, I would want to welcome our first speaker, who is from the government of Kenya, to be able to give opening remarks. And this will be done by none other but Peter Nyakwara. Peter Nyakwara is a director in technical services at the National Council for Population and Development. We call it NCPD, a semi-autonomous government agency whose mandate is the coordination of population policies and programs. And Peter got his master's in population studies from the UN Regional Institute for Population Studies at the University of Ghana. And he has over 25 years of experience on issues population and development, and has held various positions in population sector, with about 12 of these years in leadership and management positions. Peter is currently in New York, attending the UNCPD session. We would want to welcome you, Peter. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair and Moderator, Peter Munene, for that introduction. I wish to start by first wishing all of you good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. As Peter mentioned clearly, we are in New York for the UN Commission on Population Development meeting. And today, this event is very important for us because it's being hosted alongside the former UN Commission, and it's a formal event. I wish to recognize our distinguished panelists and the participants for this webinar, and start by appreciating the support we received from our UN Kenya mission, permanent mission to UN, led by our Ambassador Jambi, Jovi, and Riri. They ensure that this said event is put in the calendar of events that will be participating. My remarks will be very brief, and I wish to mention that 2019, you remember Kenya hosted the ICPD 25 together with the UNFPA and the government of Denmark. In that event, the Arab Summit on ICPD, NCPD, the National Council for Population and Development, is the one who was providing the secretariats, and we participated both in the international program development and all other components. It was a successful event. It gave very transformative agenda, how to accelerate the promise. And as a country, immediately after the summit, NCPD and the Kenya government in general embarked immediately to implement the global and Kenya. The first thing we did was to prepare a detailed summit reports and also an implementation plan of how we can be able to implement the summit. Subsequently, we also did our first and second link. And also, one thing up front is that the first commitment was deliberate. It was on how to employ innovation and technology to ensure adolescent and young people attain the highest standard rates and eliminate teenage pregnancy. One of the things we did immediately was to start the Let Us Act campaign so that we address the issue of high prevalence of teenage pregnancy, gender-based violence, and also HIV/AIDS among young people. That campaign has been very successful through the support of UN family, especially the UN Women, UNESCO, UNFPA, and also the support of Plan International the other partners have come on board and they have assisted us to continue with that campaign. Of importance, which I would like to say with these webinar members, is that the drive is led by our principal secretary at the steering committee and has brought on board all other permanent secretaries relevant in this commitment. Last week, part one, here we scaled up the campaign. Now we are the meeting of all our regional commissioners and the county commissioners, the 47 of them, and the cabinet secretary interior, as prioritized and directed that the triple threat will be the focus this time. There are a number of achievements we have done and also challenges experienced in the course of implementation. As we are aware, the COVID-19 pandemic set in immediately, and the last year and the part of this year, it slowed down activities we were to undertake, but give us an opportunity to look at ways of addressing what we had put in our work plan. And one of them was to use the technology to hold as many session meeting, advocacy meeting, and also in-person meetings, which we did. As a country, one of the things we also did, which I wish to say is high-level advocacy with our parliamentarians. Because if you look at our 17 commitments, most of those commitments evolve around the resource allocation. And with the cabinet memorandum, which approves the commitments, we have used that memorandum to advocate the budget reallocation. And I'm proud here this morning to report that the Minister of Health budget, especially the one on reproductive health and the family planning commodity, has been enhanced. And for the first time, we were allocated, the minister was allocated 1.3 billion Kenya shillings. This is the highest we have ever done, and we are almost approaching that FP commodities requirements. The other part which I also wanted to say is that in the commitment, one of the things was to review relevant policies to respond to those commitments. And the last year and the previous year, we were able to revise our population policy through a very consultative process, and currently it is before the cabinet for approval and adoption by parliament. There are other related policies, Minister of Health is undertaking and other institutions, which will also enhance our activity. The other thing which I wish to share with the members this morning is the aspect of integrating population variables into the development planning process, and also putting into consideration population issues in the budget making process. What we have done, we are now in the process of revising and developing our medium-term plan 4 of Vision 2030, and all the sectoral policies, and specifically the population, housing, and urbanization sector plan. We have integrated population issues so that it responds to the country commitment and the global commitment. The many MTP4 will also input all those commitments so that they are integrated and budgeted for, which is a key aspect.
Peter, you are concluding, yes.
Yeah, I'm concluding. The other part which I wanted to say is also the issue of coordination and the partnership. Here, this global and the Kenya country commitments requires a robust coordination strategy and also cooperation. As NCPD, we have realized that link weakness, and therefore we have developed a partner coordination mechanism and also enhanced our collaboration in the region and the global. And that's why this morning we request that The executive director of PPD makes his remarks because he has been a great champion on the part of advocating for the GROPO and the CPD 25. I wish to conclude by appreciating the UNFPA, who has been a key player in this field, and they have supported us in a number of programs that aim at enhancing and accelerating the promise. There are other partners, Planned Parenthood, GROPO, who have also, on the US side, who have also supported this initiative, and we are seeing many partners coming on board. The one challenge here, which I will bring up front as I conclude, is this aspect. You remember that time when we were planning for the SCPD, the GROPO community promised and committed funds. We are not able to see those funds, especially to Kenya, and therefore the next assignment as a country, as the NCPD, which has been given this role to track and report on the progress, is to bring the civil society, the private sector, and other government agencies on board, the development partner, to be able to document every effort each institution is undertaking, and also track the resources which have been allocated for the program, because we can't achieve this commitment without the resources. That's the major challenge we have. Thank you. I will respond on the other commitments, and I appreciate all the panelists who are present and the participants. Thank you.
Very much, Peter. Michael, can I be heard?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. We can hear you, Peter.
Hello, Michael, can I be heard?
Yes, yes, we can hear you, Peter.
We are hearing you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry, I think my gadgets here are misreading me. They are showing that I do not have a microphone. Allow me then to introduce Mr. Etken of the Netherlands, who has devoted more than 27 years to public service. And since January 2021, he is serving as Director, Policy and Strategy Division, providing leadership to UNFPA's strategic direction and programmatic support. And prior to this, from 2015, he served as Director of the Division of Communications and Strategic Partnerships for UNFPA, providing, again, strategic leadership and direction to UNFPA's resource mobilization efforts, the building of strategic partnerships, and the global advocacy and communication activities. You're most welcome to make your remarks.
Thank you, Peter. And Excellencies, distinguished delegates, friends and colleagues, it's really delighted to be here representing UNFPA in this event. Let me start by first thanking the government of Kenya, ACT Alliance, ACT Church of Sweden, the Faith to Action Network, the African Women's Development and Communications Network, and FOS Feminista, our partners in advocating for the rights of women and girls, young people, and those most vulnerable in our societies. 28 years ago in Cairo, delegates from all regions met at the International Conference on Population Development, ICPD, and reached global consensus, recognizing that health and well-being, including sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights, gender equality, and education, were at the heart of development. In fact, it was a dramatic paradigm shift, putting people at the center of development. Since then, As you all know, much progress has been achieved in realizing this transformative agenda for women and girls. The Nairobi Summit on ICPD 25, when we celebrated the 25th anniversary of the ICPD Program of Action in 2019, reinvigorated the movement, reiterating the importance of rights and choices for all as critical for achieving sustainable development. More than 25 years on from the promise of Cairo, however, patterns of injustice continue to undercut human resilience and well-being for everyone as the world faces the socioeconomic impact of the largest global public health crisis in a century, coupled with a climate emergency and increasing conflict and humanitarian needs, most recently, of course, what's happening in the Ukraine. With its recent report entitled "No Exceptions, No Exclusions, Realizing Sexual and Reproductive Health, Rights and Justice for All," the High-Level Commission on the Nairobi ICPD 25 follow-up brought to our attention a distressing setback in SRHR globally, which has taken a heavy toll on women and girls' rights. The lack of essential sexual and reproductive health and rights services, and the failure to make health systems resilient and universally accessible has resulted in more maternal deaths, more unintended pregnancies, more unsafe abortions, more gender-based violence, and increase in child marriages. The pandemic has also laid bare the glaring inequities of people who face different intersecting forms of discrimination based on their gender, race, age, disability, poverty, and status as a refugee or a migrant. For these women and girls, even where they may have access to services, this does not guarantee their ability to realize their rights or avail themselves of services, and they are some of the furthest behind. Data also makes this clear. 94% of preventable maternal deaths occur among poor women in low-income countries. Against this backdrop, as the 55th Commission on Population and Development meets this week to deliberate, we need all sectors of society to join hands and advocate for a meaningful outcome, one that recognizes at least 6 things that I want to highlight. First, it needs to recognize the economic benefits as well of sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights. It is good in and of itself, but it has also direct implications for sustainable development. That's the first. It should recognize women's economic empowerment as a catalyst for sustained and inclusive growth. We need to recognize investments in human capital development that maximize the potential of demographic dividends in young people. It needs to recognize the need for quality education, including universal secondary education, with a focus on girls' school attainment. Fifth, it needs to really recognize the disproportionate burdens of unpaid care and domestic work performed by women and girls. And finally, it needs to recognize the need for quality disaggregated data to inform effective policymaking. The importance of these issues cuts across sectors, including development and humanitarian contexts, where preparedness, early and anticipatory action, and the provision of life-saving sexual and reproductive health and gender-based violence interventions should be recognized. To realize this vision for humanity, we need robust action by all sectors of society, by joining hands with feminist groups and women-led organizations, social movements, people of African descent, indigenous populations, persons with disabilities, young people, as well as faith actors. And UNFPA is working to reinvigorate and expand its partnerships to ensure that all segments of society are reached and that no one is left behind. Women-led organizations, feminist movements, faith-based organizations, and religious leaders all play a key role in defending human rights and advocating for SRHR and economic justice, both at the global and at the community level. By sharing examples of innovative partnerships, events like this go a long way in showing how the full and effective implementation of the ICPD Program of Action is essential to achieving sustainable development, particularly as the international community recovers from COVID-19 and its devastating socioeconomic impacts. By exploring areas of collaboration between governments and civil society, including between secular and faith actors, today we can demonstrate that there is no contradiction between the human rights principles and religions, as they share the core objective of recognizing the inherent dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of all members of our human family. At UNFPA, we are acutely aware of the indispensable role faith actors and feminist organizations play as change makers, and we look to these key partners to continue driving social norm changes at the community and grassroots levels. Together we must deliver a sustainable and resilient world, one where no one is left behind, and where every pregnancy is wanted, where every childbirth is safe, and where every young person's potential is fulfilled. I thank you and wish us all a very successful event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arthur, and we appreciate your ability to the opportunity of you joining us in this webinar. Without wasting too much, I want to invite Haj Isa, the Executive Director of PPD, the Partners in Population and Development, who will share with us in about 3 minutes what PPD is doing. It's an organization that is represented in 25 member countries. And before he joined PPD, he was working with the International Cooperation Department of the Tunisian government. Haj Isa, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I wish to start by thanking the organizers for inviting me to this important virtual meeting, and wish to express my sincere appreciation to the National Council of Population and Development of Kenya, founding member of PPD, for their efforts towards the achievement of Nairobi Summit commitments, the theme of our today's webinar. And I'm delighted to share with you PPD's experience in accelerating the implementation of Nairobi Summit commitment at national level through the efforts and contributions made by national task forces established by PPD in partnership with UNFPA. As you may know, PPD was launched at the ICPD held in Cairo in 1994 with the mandate to institutionalize and promote South-South cooperation for the achievement of the ICPD program of action. Started with 10 founding members, PPD attracted 27 other developing countries and representing more than 60% of the world population, where 94% of maternal death occur, as Arthur said earlier. Since 1994, PPD and UNFPA have developed strong partnership, and in 2019 have jointly renewed their engagement to review the progress of the Nairobi Summit commitments through a consultative process to evaluate the country's initiatives to meet the national commitments and the progress made and actions taken. This consultative process helped member countries identify the challenges and come up with the new strategies. And PPD's 14 member countries have taken initiatives to strengthen national levels of South-South cooperation structure and institutionalize national consultation through national task force, or call it the national coordination committees, for follow-up of Nairobi commitments. Bangladesh, Benin, China, Gambia, Ghana, Indonesia, Kenya, Morocco, Nigeria, South Africa, Thailand, Uganda, Tunisia, and Zimbabwe have reported on remarkable progress made during 2020 and 2021, despite the pandemic of COVID-19. Necessary initiatives have been made through PPD partner country coordinators to strengthen the existing national task force for follow-up and expedite the action of Nairobi commitment to achieve the 3 transformative objectives in 14 member countries. National task forces have supported the mechanism for promoting South-South cooperation and build in-country support for follow-up of Nairobi commitments as a major driver of political action and commitment, promoting national campaign for ensuring the achievement of the 3 Zeros objective by 2030. Mr. Chairperson, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it's important to deploy countries' experience and scale up South-South cooperation and extend them across various development sectors beyond our direct mandate. South-South cooperation plays a critical role in operationalizing the commitment that partners and governments made in Nairobi nearly 2.5 years ago, and where government and partners' commitment to transform the world by ending all maternal deaths, unmet need for family planning, and prevent gender-based violence and harmful practices against women and girls by 2030. The Nairobi report recognized that South-South and triangular cooperation is an accelerator in achieving the ICPD program of action and promoting gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls in sustainable development. The response to and recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic needs to be carried out with the gender lens, ensuring sexual reproductive health and rights, promoting gender equality, and protecting people from all kinds of violence, particularly women and girls. Mr. Chairperson, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, tremendous progress has been made to achieve ICPD program of action in PPD member countries, and they continued since the Nairobi Summit on ICPD 25 held in 2019. The reports from the 14 member countries showed that despite COVID-19 pandemic affecting the country's economy and health sectors, government put efforts aiming at the achievement of their commitments. And I'm pleased to share with you a few examples of member countries' initiatives. In Bangladesh, they have developed the digital track recording system of sustainable development goals, which is also using for monitoring progress on Nairobi Summit commitments. China has ensured the contraceptive provision amidst COVID-19 in responding to the emerging pandemic. Both offline and online approaches have been applied by the government of China for contraceptive delivery across the country to best meet the contraceptive needs of community people. The internet technology has played a leading role in contraceptive delivery during the COVID-19. The Gambian government trained 500 clinical service providers to deliver long-term contraceptive methods at all levels of healthcare system and reduce the unmet needs of family planning. The Indonesian government made serious efforts to synchronize policies and strategies, standardizing the quality of services and resources to implement Nairobi commitments. Government of Kenya developed new strategies to achieve country's commitment and took initiatives to track and monitor the implementation of the ICPD 25 Nairobi Summit commitments. South Africa government has developed the National Strategies Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide by 2020 and 2030, which was approved in April 2020. Also, South Africa developed the Tutuzila Care Center model to prevent gender-based violence in comprehensive and multi-sectoral approach. Thailand implemented youth-friendly health service based on the WHO recommendation across the country for providing comprehensive sexual reproductive health services among young people for zero sexual and gender-based violence and harmful practices against women and girls. Government of Thailand introduced the One-Stop Crisis Center to compile data from all hospitals throughout the country. These are few examples from the reports that we have received from our member countries, and the report will be shared with the member countries. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I wish to acknowledge the efforts made by the partner country coordinators in bringing national countries stakeholders and the National Task Force to identify adequate policies and strategies towards the implementation of Nairobi commitment and accelerate the realization of the ICPD by 2030. Faith action networks should also be involved in the national effort, as they are playing a key role in all communities. PPD and UNFPA will continue the partnership in the years to come for more effective advocacy and policy development, capacity strengthening of South-South cooperation focal persons and PCC, documenting and sharing of best practices, and establishing centers, South-South cooperation centers of excellence for the attainment of global health-related objectives. PPD and UNFPA developed a reference document on standard protocol for establishing center of excellence, which has been shared with the member countries for evaluating their capacities and build on their existing expertise and know-how to be elevated as center of excellence, reproductive health, and population-related matters. I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and for participants. and wish you success in the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Haj Isa, for sharing about what PPD and the member countries are doing. And that also marks a break from listening to government and intergovernmental agencies. And now we would want to listen a little bit more from the civil society side. And I hope and trust that the representatives from PPD, UNFPA, and the government of Kenya will still be present. Please don't go away because we would want to identify opportunities for partnership together. I also want to encourage participants that they can post any questions they have on the Q&A. The Q&A section of the screen that you have, but equally that you can also post that in the chat, and we'll be able to respond to your questions. And please let us know to whom the question is directed to, if it is possible. But even if it is not possible, we'll try and direct the question to the relevant person. I also want to note that as we take a break from government and go to the civil society, that there is an option on the globe icon in your screen or on your screen that allows you to be able to listen to interpretation, either from Spanish to English or to English, from English to Spanish. And therefore, I want to start by now introducing a conversation around partnerships, power, and prophetic voice. And our first person to introduce us to this will be Pamela. Pamela Request, I hope I have pronounced it correctly. And Pamela Request is, of course, a woman, a Christian from Guatemala. She's also a feminist and a theology student. She's the chairperson or the coordinator of ZEDEPCA, Guatemala, of the Women Ministry, and a member of the ACT Guatemala Forum, and a member of the Community of Practice for Gender Justice of the ACT Alliance in Latin America and the Caribbean. And to welcome Pamela, I want to pose to her a question. And the question is, Pamela, how are you working in Guatemala as faith actors to ensure communities have access to sexual reproductive health in Guatemala? Pamela.
Bien. Primero, buenos días a todas y todos. Es un gusto para mí compartir con ustedes en este panel y un honor y desafío traer la voz de las mujeres de la Alianza ACT y de América Latina. Bueno, desde el foro de la acción conjunta de las iglesias ACT Alianza en Guatemala, estamos realizando esfuerzos para contribuir a la justicia de género, lo cual abarca los derechos sexuales y reproductivos de las adolescentes y mujeres adultas, así como los derechos de los adolescentes varones. Desde el 2020, iglesias y organizaciones basadas en la fe hemos unido esfuerzos para llevar a cabo el proyecto denominado Actuando desde la Fe para contribuir a la justicia de género en Guatemala. Este proyecto nos ha permitido reforzar el trabajo que hemos realizado por varios años, pero también nos ha desafiado en medio de la pandemia por COVID-19 a innovar en temas y metodologías para trabajar con las poblaciones objetivo. Sabemos que la falta de acceso y goce de los derechos sexuales y reproductivos de las mujeres pasa por el poder de los fundamentalismos religiosos, políticos y económicos, reforzados por el sistema patriarcal que se niega a reconocernos a las mujeres como personas dignas y sujetas de derechos. Por lo tanto, desde el foro ACT en Guatemala, estamos seguras y seguros que la tarea de garantizar que las comunidades, principalmente las mujeres, tengan acceso a la salud y los derechos sexuales y reproductivos. No puede ir esto desvinculado a la deconstrucción de los imaginarios machistas y patriarcales que refuerzan la negación y privación de los mismos. De manera directa, el proyecto Actuando desde la Fe para contribuir a la justicia de género en Guatemala busca que los liderazgos eclesiales y comunidades de fe aporten a la prevención de la violencia contra las mujeres, cuestionen los fundamentalismos religiosos y cambien esos imaginarios misóginos y violentos. También el proyecto busca que hombres y jóvenes construyan modelos de masculinidades alternativas, no violentas, con argumentos cristianos liberadores. Además, que mujeres, jóvenes y adolescentes, incluidas sobrevivientes de violencia basada en género, conozcan y comiencen a ejercer sus derechos a la salud sexual y reproductiva. Todo esto lo hemos realizado y lo continuamos realizando a través de diferentes actividades, como una campaña llamada No más violencia contra las mujeres, basta ya, que circuló mensajes en idioma maya chortí y en idioma español a través de la radio, haciendo conciencia sobre la importancia de que las mujeres seamos reconocidas como ciudadanas. Pues si las mujeres fuéramos tratadas al igual que los hombres en derechos y dignidad y oportunidades, podríamos construir una sociedad más justa y solidaria. Además, la campaña circuló también afiches o flyers con el mensaje de que las mujeres nos queremos vivas, libres y sin miedo, para crear conciencia en las familias y en las comunidades. También se realizó una campaña virtual llamada Al encuentro y rescate de la fragilidad humana en la masculinidad. Esta campaña visibilizó los diferentes tipos de masculinidades violentas y agresivas para ayudar primero a su identificación y análisis, y a su vez promover alternativas que promuevan la construcción de relaciones dignas, justas y libres de violencia. Además, se han realizado 4 foros sobre fundamentalismos religiosos, en donde con liderazgos de comunidades de fe se han abordado los temas de los fundamentalismos religiosos frente a la vida plena, las teologías para la vida plena de las mujeres y las mujeres en la iglesia, caminando hacia una comunidad de iguales. También se han realizado talleres con adolescentes sobre nuevas masculinidades. Se ha trabajado con personas de iglesia, con jóvenes de iglesias, en donde se han abordado los temas como la familia patriarcal, toda esta lógica de dominación en las relaciones, el rol de las mujeres en la familia y en la sociedad, así como también las propuestas de feministas, la percepción también del cuerpo desde la economía, el Estado y la iglesia y la relación entre ellas, y también en la construcción del imaginario de Dios, de las relaciones libres de violencia y de esta comunidad de iguales que queremos construir, que es una propuesta para hacer comunidad entre mujeres y hombres libres en el ejercicio de sus derechos. Hemos trabajado también talleres sobre derechos y salud sexual y reproductiva con mujeres y hombres adolescentes. Con mujeres específicamente hemos abordado el tema de derechos, de los derechos a vivir con dignidad, de vivir libres de violencia, así como el tema también de menstruación y la gestión menstrual. Se ha hablado para quitar un poco el tabú de que la menstruación es sucia y que nos convierte a las mujeres como personas impuras, que muchas veces se ha fomentado así, para verlo como algo parte de los ciclos naturales de los cuerpos de las mujeres creados por Dios. Y también hemos podido entregar paquetes de toallas menstruales reusables que les permiten a ellas gestionar su sangre menstrual sin miedo y también de manera responsable para con la madre tierra. Además, de manera general, también hemos abordado temas de métodos anticonceptivos y planificación familiar. En el caso de adolescentes varones, se ha abordado el tema de derechos a una vida digna y libre de violencia también, como compañeros con las mujeres, así también como el tema de métodos anticonceptivos y de planificación familiar. Se han realizado también jornadas de acceso a la salud sexual y reproductiva con mujeres, las cuales han permitido que mujeres de áreas rurales tengan acceso a la realización de exámenes para la detección temprana de cáncer de útero, así como a métodos anticonceptivos, también como la pastilla de anticoncepción de emergencia, pastillas anticonceptivas regulares y métodos de planificación familiar como la té de cobre o el yadel. Ha sido todo un logro que liderazgos comunitarios y de iglesias se concienticen sobre la importancia del acceso a la salud y los derechos sexuales y reproductivos de las mujeres. Pues estas actividades se han realizado en alianzas con pastores y mujeres que ejercen liderazgos en sus iglesias. Además de este trabajo con la población, este proyecto ha aportado también a que hacia adentro las organizaciones del foro de la Alianza ACT en Guatemala podamos fortalecer nuestras capacidades y herramientas para transversalizar la justicia de género. Pues este proyecto también nos ha permitido capacitarnos sobre género, identidad y relaciones equitativas. Hemos tenido espacios de intercambio de experiencias sobre políticas de justicia de género y también nos hemos asesorado para la creación de políticas de género hacia nuestras organizaciones. Entonces hemos iniciado este caminar. Me gustaría continuar también. Nos preguntaban sobre cuáles han sido algunos de los desafíos que hemos encontrado en este trabajo profético sobre la salud y los derechos sexuales y reproductivos. Y quisiera iniciar con, tenemos muchos desafíos, pero identifico principalmente 3. El primero de los desafíos y uno de los más grandes es esta alianza entre los fundamentalismos políticos, religiosos y económicos que no permiten el acceso a la educación sexual y reproductiva, sino que la limitan, la condenan y hasta la satanizan. Derivado de esto, existe mucha ignorancia y hemos encontrado dificultad para trabajar temas como los derechos sexuales y reproductivos o los métodos anticonceptivos, pues se cree que esto incitará a la juventud a tener relaciones sexuales de manera irresponsable. También ha limitado a que mujeres de iglesias no participen en jornadas de implementación de métodos de planificación familiar, porque muchos hombres y pastores son quienes deciden sobre estos temas y sobre el cuerpo de las mujeres, aduciendo que las hijas e hijos son una bendición de Dios y que las mujeres deben tener los hijos que Dios les mande. Así sea que las y los niños nacidos no tengan garantizada una vida digna, con acceso a la salud, vivienda y educación. Otra de las dificultades han sido las grandes desigualdades en que viven las comunidades rurales e indígenas, a raíz del racismo y la discriminación, pues son poblaciones olvidadas por el Estado y víctimas de empobrecimiento y del despojo de sus recursos y sus territorios. Se tiene dificultad para llegar a estas comunidades y Para muchas personas, su principal prioridad no es la educación y la búsqueda de sus derechos, sino que es la supervivencia diaria. Por último, mencionaría también que uno de los desafíos ha sido la crisis ahora provocada también por la pandemia del COVID-19 y su mal manejo. En Guatemala, en muchas comunidades no se ha compartido de la manera adecuada las formas de cuidado, la educación y la vacunación. Hasta el 22 de abril de este año, apenas un 33% de la población está totalmente vacunada. Nuevamente derivado de un manejo no adecuado de la pandemia y también nuevamente de la influencia de los fundamentalismos religiosos que han atemorizado a la población con que la vacunación es un sinónimo de la denominada marca de la bestia, como un episodio apocalíptico a raíz de una mala interpretación de las escrituras bíblicas. Y bueno, sin embargo, a pesar de estos y otros desafíos que enfrentamos, desde las iglesias y organizaciones basadas en la fe que conformamos la Alianza ACT, en Guatemala continuaremos realizando esfuerzos para buscar que las mujeres podamos gozar y ejercer nuestros derechos, incluidos los derechos y salud sexual y reproductiva, como ciudadanas, pero también como hijas de Dios, creadas a su imagen y semejanza. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Pamela, for sharing with us about some of the interventions that have been done by SEDEPCA within Guatemala. And we now close over to Uganda, where we'll be listening to Nagiba. I trust that Nagiba is with us. Nagiba is a teacher by profession and a transformative peace practitioner for the last 23 years now. And Nagiba started the Women's Desk at Uganda Muslim Supreme Council in 2009 and lobbied for women to be constitutionalized within Interreligious Council of Uganda. Nagiba is the chairperson of the Women of Faith network here in Africa, and she'll be sharing with us her own experiences and some of the interventions that she has done. Nagiba, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much, Peter. I'm in a very noisy place. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Nagiba.
Thank you so much. In Uganda and particularly the faith communities have done so much in regards to sexual. You can hear me? Okay. There's so much that has been done by the faith actors and faith communities, the religious leaders, and in partnership to different UN agencies like the UNFPA, UNICEF, and UNDP. This, what is happening, what has happened is we've utilized our religious texts to align them to the advocacy that's being done for on health rights. And then the religious leaders using their spaces use the message that is backed up with scriptures to engage the communities, to pass on the information and to have them pass on to their constituencies they lead. Personally, as a person who has been working with young people and still work with them, I believe in empowering young people so that they have enough knowledge, the right knowledge that they use to make informed decisions about their lives. Because when we don't do that, then we leave them to be in dilemmas, in doing what they think is wrong, yet some of these things are accepted according to religion or culture, but within the age brackets. For the women, most of them who have faced many problems, maternal death and all that, and they give reasons like their partner didn't accept or it's against religion and all that. We've used our own Quran teachings and hadith to engage them, to sensitize them, but most of all, we've had the religious leaders to talk to them. But this calls for religious leaders to be empowered themselves, to build their capacity around health issues so that they align these issues with the Islamic teaching so that the people then take it, because people believe and trust their religious leaders, and they will only take on something wholeheartedly if they know it's backed up with their religious scriptures. So we do that. If you're doing anything with the young people, for example, young children, we're talking about their body changes and what happens and what choices make what consequences, or if certain choices are not taken, what happens to us. While this is still kind of a taboo among many communities, they don't want to talk about issues around sexuality because most of them think we are then empowering children to become sexually active. But without the information, then they make wrong decisions and they get into the what we would call maybe youth mistakes that affect them again. They don't only affect the children or the youth making those wrong decisions, but they're affecting everyone else, the family, the country. At the end of the day, we don't have young people who have maybe gone to school, especially girls, because they will drop out, and this affects everything else. We have book clubs where we empower the young people as peer educators, and we give them basic information. Because we can't have the whole school at the same time, we have ambassadors from different classes that form the book club, and we train them, and then they pass on also the information to the other classes. And also what we're trying to work out with faith leaders, religious places of worship and cultural places, and where they're leaders and have their own offices, the office space. We're trying to create safe working spaces, but empowering the religious leaders, the cultural leaders, and maybe the local council leaders to have the information to provide to the young people or to the women when they come to them. Another thing we're trying to work on is working with the religious leaders as custodians of marriages. Most times they will talk to the couples just a few weeks before or a few months before their marriage, and I don't know what happens to the counseling after that. Because it should be a journey of mentoring, nurturing, giving information to these couples so that they continue to have the right information and make informed decisions along the way. But you'll find that, I'm sorry to say this, but some people or some individuals will not even listen to anything about issues on sexual rights or on the health, yet they'll look at it as taboo, like you're trying to fight religion, to become a rebel, to go against God. But when we look at our scriptures, we have rights as human beings. We have a right to preserve life. We have rights to information. We have rights to marriage. All those rights are aligned to what we're teaching. There's no way you talk about marriage and you don't talk about sexuality. People will look, when you mention sexuality, they just look at the sexual act. They don't look at all these other things that happen. The body changes, what happens, the choices we have to make, and reasons why we have to make those choices. And I want to believe that just like in Islam, also other religions allow decisions made that are justified. For example, when you look at a woman who is expecting, if they have maybe one child and they're not, her health is not good, and maybe also the husband is strained financially, they would want maybe to delay a bit to have another baby until they stabilize the health of the mother who is going to look after this child, and also so the father gets to stabilize. So this would be a justified decision. So there are many activities that have happened and many interventions that we are making, but we also borrow a lot from the UN family because they have tools. Faith to Action has very nice tools that support the religious leaders to engage better on sexual rights and health. So we're using a combination of that, and I'm very happy to be in this space to share and to learn, because I believe there are many good practices happening in different places that you bring into the table, and we could borrow some of those and replicate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nagiba. Apologies for the background noise. Sometimes when you are connecting, you connect through some of those challenges. I now want to invite Eva Ekelund, the policy director at ACT Church of Sweden, who also serves as the deputy international director, and with over 25 years of experience in development practice, advocacy work, and policy dialogue, and is representing the faith community in the CSO platform for development effectiveness. Eva, you're most welcome. You have about 2.5, 3 minutes.
Muy buenos días, muy buenas tardes. Thank you to all the participants and the very interesting participations. The striking figures presented by UNFPA are how 24% of maternal deaths occur among those who live in poverty. The link between sexual reproductive health rights and economic justice are very clear, especially now with the setback after the pandemic. We have the data that those in poverty bear the brunt of lack of access to rights in regards to sexual and reproductive health. We've heard that the lack of access to sexual and reproductive health is seen as a driver to poverty, and ensuring its access is also key to contributing to poverty alleviation and ensuring funding to sexual and reproductive health rights. And this is, I would like to stress, not a cost, but an investment in development. Rights-based and gender-responsive universal social protection, including universal health coverage, access to education for all, and decent work are critical to contributing to reducing inequality and building back better in the wake of the ongoing pandemic and post-pandemic times. Acknowledging the role of the public sector and the state to deliver on social protection, linking and partnering with civil society, including faith-based sectors, is crucial if we are to leave no one behind. Religious actors in their diversity already engaged in the ICPD program of action, from former leaderships to providers of education and health systems and other services delivering social protections, as mentioned here today. And faith actors in their diversity continue to hold power and presence and reach spaces where the state and public sectors might not, as we've heard, among others, Pamela say, where they do not engage in full program actions. Religious actors are well placed. As faith actors, we are also painfully aware of the pushback against the aspects related to sexual and reproductive health rights in the program of action from the global to the local levels. And it's based on misunderstanding of religious interpretations. And we know how this impacts access to services for people on the ground. And also we know that it impacts trust between sectors. And this impacts partnering, which is why the session on the top and the topic is a constant good reminder of inclusive partnerships. And looking at, as well as looking at the clock time, as well represented by Pamela speaking from the Guatemalan context and the ACT Alliance work with religious leaders, as in that context, using religion, theology to undo the damage of religion for the benefits of human rights of all, women, young people, but also men. As Pamela reminds us, men also benefit from being free from patriarchy. And in general, and as mentioned by our Ugandan colleague, using holy scriptures for contextual interpretation of sexual and reproductive health rights in our present time. And how long have I got now? 1 minute?
You need to be closing.
In closing, I would like to have some very punctual recommendations for the audience. One suggestion is that we do not start with the most difficult conversations. We should start where there is common ground on issues, and also stress that private conversation, safe spaces are important. Public conversations such as this one and digitally are not always fruitful for trust and partnering. And we've seen this in our digital times. It's in the corridor that you reach agreements sometimes. It can be slow, it's a long game. We are not in this either for a quick fix. Are the right people in there with you? Are you enabling the right leaders? And as we have been reminded here today, young people are also faith leaders. Are we faith blind? Are we youth blind? And we should be aware of instrumentalizing each other or either ends. And if no risk, there is no gain. We can't ask others to risk something if we do not also engage in risks. Risk can look in many different ways. And we have to move the speed of trust. If it needs to take time, it takes time, but we will make it. All of this is not new, and I'm concluding by saying that including the program of action, and this is it's crucial for obtaining the sustainable development goals based on gender justice and rights and theology. So muchas gracias, saludos a todos. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eva. I'm sorry that I'm going to close over quickly to Reverend Canon Grace Kaiso. Reverend Canon Grace Kaiso is a theologian and an ordained minister in the Anglican Church, and has trained in Uganda, in Sweden, in Canada, and has been ordained since 1977. He is also the chairperson of Faith to Action Network. And I want to leave it at that point and welcome Reverend Canon Grace Kaiso to offer some closing ones for this particular side event. Reverend Canon Kaiso.
Screen. Hello. I would like to appreciate this space that has enabled us to have such a fruitful discussion around the issues of shared concern. We are meeting under the cloud of COVID, and the COVID pandemic is, among other things, pushing us to reflect deeply, to listen to each other, and to evolve new ways of working. There are things that we need to discard because of the COVID experience, and there are those we need to hold on to. We need to reconnect with each other at a certain depth because the pandemic has shocked our very foundations and has impacted our institutions. Therefore, our response in this environment cannot be business as usual. And I'm therefore delighted that the framing of our theme started with the word reimagining. Reimagining partnerships, power, and prophetic voices for sexual reproductive health and rights and economic justice. This presupposes that we need to be creative. We need to be creative in tackling the existing challenges. We need to be creative in engaging with each other and also face the existing bottlenecks in terms of policy vigorously. The sharing from the different presenters impressed upon us the need to push the agenda of accelerating the promise of realizing the ICPD 25 commitments. While there are many setbacks, including conflicts, funding challenges, cultural barriers, capacity gaps, the digital divide, those of us here, I'm sure, are convinced beyond reasonable doubt that the way to the future is always under construction. This means we will need to draw heavily on our experiences and to engage in imagination on the future we desire to see. We have already a lot of stepping stones in this direction. We have already had achievements in these previous years of our struggle. For instance, we used to speak past each other, but we now speak to each other. We used to think that matters of sexual reproductive health and rights were for human activists, but faith communities now believe that these matters are about life and human dignity, and they are part of their mandate. We used to work in silos. Now we have appreciated the culture or the value of working in partnership. Faith communities and scientists used to engage suspiciously with each other. But we now have come to realize that matters that relate to human existence have both the scientific and moral dimension. So both faith community, faith leaders, and scientists can comfortably draw on each other's capacities. We have come to learn that if we close our eyes to the facts, we will learn through accidents. Just as we have been shocked by the teenage pregnancy crisis in many of our countries. This has woken us up to facing the critical need to make reproductive health services accessible to young people. So friends, let's continue in conversation. Let's continue in partnership. And as Eva has highlighted for us, this might appear to be slow. It's not a quick fix, but we must make it inclusive. We must be open to evaluating our positions and to engaging with emerging challenges and adapting new technologies in our response. So let us be encouraged. Sometimes we appear to be working against each other, but really the way forward to the future we desire for all of us is through conversation and dialogue. I wish you continuous productive engagements around these issues of concern. Thank you for participating in this very strategic conversation. May God bless you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Canon Kaiso. Thank everyone who has been with us in this particular webinar. This side event, as I said initially, is a side event organized around the ICPD, I read the CPD, the UN Commission on Population and Development 55th session, which is taking place in Geneva. It's a hybrid session. It is taking place both face-to-face and also by others joining virtually. And we feel very privileged to have been part of this event and to be able to hold an event that speaks to what the civil society and the faith actors, the faith community can contribute in accelerating the promises that have been made within the international ICPD and as a forum, the space that has been provided by UNCPD, where the faith community can be able to engage with the government and other stakeholders in advancing the needs of the communities that we serve. I want to really appreciate everyone and thank those that have been able to join and thank the government of Kenya for co-sponsoring this particular side event together with UNFPA, Faith to Action Network, ACT Alliance, and Feminista, and ACT Church of Sweden. Thank you so much. We know that there are many questions that have been posted on the Q&A section. We know that there are others that we are not able to respond to, or the panelists are not able to respond to directly because of time, but we'll be sending responses together with a summary report of this particular session to the participants who have been able to join us, because we have your details, we have your email and communication. We'll be able to respond to those questions and also share with you the report. I want to thank you very much, and I want to then pass over this particular mantle now to Rachel for any final ones. Rachel?
Thank you, Peter, and thank you to all our speakers and co-hosts. We really appreciate your time coming together. And as Peter said, we will share the summary report and the recording shortly. Thank you so much. All the best.
Okay, then from me to you, I have to say bye-bye. And I know for some it is mornings, for some it's evening, for some it's afternoon, but from wherever you are, bye-bye, and thank you very much for joining us.
Bye-bye, Peter and the team.
Bye-bye, Peter, and